Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is the Grantsmanship game, Playing to Win. My name is David Gates and I'm part of the online education team here at GrantStation, and I'll be your host. Now, there are many myths about grant seeking, which unfortunately may be slowing your grant success without you even realizing it. Fortunately, Maryn Boess is here with us today to bust these myths and share five best practices for grant success in challenging times. Over her 25 plus year career, Maryn has been an on-staff grant writer, a grants consultant, a grants trainer, a grants reviewer, and since 2006, even a grant maker. This background brings a unique insider's perspective to the practical, inspiring trainings on healthy, successful grantsmanship that she shares with thousands of people each year through Grants Magic U. As a true dual citizen of the grants world, Maryn is the perfect person to help you up your grants game in challenging times. So please welcome Maryn Boess.
Well, good morning, everybody. At least it's morning where I am. And thank you, David, for that warm welcome. It's always such a joy to be partnering with GrantStation to bring you these excellent trainings. And I'm especially excited about what we're going to be doing here today, because it's a training I don't have the opportunity to often offer, and I really love doing it. We've got a jam-packed hour and a half ahead of us, and I hope you are as excited as I am to get things underway. Now, David introduced this training by its title. There is a whole bunch packed into that title. I just want to take a minute to break it down. It pretty much describes what we're going to be covering. It just doesn't give you the nitty-gritty detail, but let's just break it down and really pay attention to it to give you the best setup for what we're going to be moving through here today. Let's just pull it apart a little bit. First of all, what does it mean to think of grant seeking as a game? And what does grantsmanship mean? That's not a term we hear all the time, is it? What does playing to win even mean? What are best practices when it comes to grant seeking? And why are there only 5? Probably a lot more than that. What does strategies mean in this context? Best practices, best strategies. What does grant success look like for you in your organization? What are challenging times? All the questions that are being raised by just the title slide. And then finally, zeroing right in, how do we actually apply these best practice strategies to our own on the ground work? That's the part that means the most to me. So I have 2 aims in mind for us here today. Number 1, I want to challenge you to think differently about the grants ecosystem, is what I love to call it. Grants world is my shorthand for that. And your relationship to it, how things work, maybe challenge some of your beliefs about how things work. And number 2, I want you to leave with some really powerful tools that you can actually use for those on the ground practices. Before we get too far along, I want to remember which button I push to move my slides forward. Here we go. I'm almost there. We've got a lot of things, a lot of technical bits and pieces moving along here. That worked. Just a quick moment to introduce you to Grants Magic U. That's our global grant success training community. Hey, if you're already a Grants Magic U member, and I know a lot of you are, please drop a note in the chat and say hi to everybody and encourage them to come on over and visit us at go.grantsmagic.org and see what we've got lined up to support you on your grants success path. We are always happy to welcome new people to our community. So how about we start with a little bit of a warm up? That was supposed to advance. This will work. There we go. Since we're going to be looking at grants world, again, my shorthand for the ecosystem that we're navigating and strategies for navigating it successfully, I wonder what navigating grants world feels like for you. Now, some of you I know are brand new to grants world. You signed in as a 1. A lot of you signed in as 5, 6s, 7s. I even heard an 8. I think 7 was the top of my scale, but if you're off my scale, then woohoo, magic. So you've got a lot of experience in doing this, and so do I. I've been doing this grants work for a long, long time, and I've heard a lot of things. People say it's like this or it's like that. So let's just see what you think. First of all, is it like an ATM machine where you just have to find that secret code and punch it in and the money will come out? But the trick is finding that secret code, right? Or maybe it is more like a try, it's going to work. We got it. More like a jackpot machine, right? Where you keep pushing that arm back and forth, believing that eventually things will line up and the money will come out for you too, because you look around and you see it's coming out for other people as well, right? What about whack-a-mole? So here's the arcade game whack-a-mole. Look how intent that gentleman is with his whack-a-mole game. Things are popping up randomly, and the way you win is by whacking at them when they do. It's totally reactive. You have no idea when things are going to pop up or where. You just have to whack at them when you see them and hope that you catch them in time. Is that what Grant's World feels like to you? Whack, whack, whack. Now, this one is really old school. Look at this one. You recognize this? This is that board game called Chutes and Ladders. So here you're trying to get from the bottom of the game board all the way up to the finish line up at the top. But the trick is if you land on a square that has a slide on it, you slide all the way back down to the bottom. Womp, womp, womp. So it's like just when I was getting somewhere, I'm all the way back at the bottom again. Does that resonate for you in terms of your own grants journey? This one is really common. This is probably the one I see most often. It's a jungle. I'm whacking all the time. I can't even see 3 feet ahead of me. And I have no idea where I'm going, but I'm just whacking away as hard as I can. So I must be getting somewhere, right? So here's my favorite. I think this one is my favorite. This one at least has a path, but it doesn't lead anywhere. This is Alice in Wonderland, right? And you can see Alice there in the middle. Maybe she's our total grants newbie. Maybe she's a 1 on our 1 to 7 scale. And she can see all of these passages going out in different directions from where she stands, but she has no clue which one to choose or where she's going to end up based on the one that she does choose, if she ends up anywhere at all. Any one of these examples might be what Grants World looks like and feels like to you or to someone you know, or your clients or the team members that you work with through the nonprofit organization you serve. So let's talk about this instead. What's it really like? Well, as I've said, I've been doing it for a very long time. David introduces me as having been 25 years in the field. It's actually been over 35, but thank you for giving me 10 years of my life back, David. I always appreciate that. And every one of those analogies has felt true for me at some point. But this is what I've learned over my journey. First of all, number one, grants is a long game, my friends. It's not a one and done. It's not a smash and grab. And it's a process. It's not just randomly jamming that arm on the jackpot, figuring something's going to line up sooner or later by accident. There actually is a process that we can follow. But in following that process, we don't have a predictable straight path from A to B to C to D, because it is also a what? An adventure. And that means that there's going to be a different experience each and every time. But what I know for an absolute fact is that you are the hero of that adventure. Woohoo! Thus the questing character in the top of your screen there. And good news is there is a map. And that means by map, I mean there is a clear and consistent path. Whoop, uh-oh. There it goes. I knew it was going to do that. Clear, consistent path, a reliable path. I mean, from wherever you are right now to where you want to be, wherever you're starting out as a 1, a 2, a 5, a 6, a path from where you are to where you want to be. And that's what we mean when we talk about navigating Grants World with skill and confidence and, of course, success. So in a moment, we're going to get our first peek at the Grantsmanship game board that we're going to be exploring today. But first, I just want to take a minute to set some expectations. This is a big deal for everyone to set aside. Dang it. I'm having a terrible time with this. There we go. To set aside. There we go. Hope that's the last time. What was I saying, actually? It's a big deal for you to set aside 90 minutes out of your very busy schedule. So here's what you can count on from me today. If the tech gremlins work, I promise that it'll be worth your while to be here today. That is a big promise. I promise to deliver great takeaway value for you and your team. I hope you're here with your team. If you're not, I hope you share the replay with your team when you receive it next week. I think you're going to want to do that. Because I have the grant making experience that David introduced in the introduction, I promise that I will pull back the curtain for you and reveal the behind the scenes truths, you might call them, about some really big grant seeking myths that might be holding you back without your even knowing it. And I absolutely promise that you're going to have at least one big aha that's going to shift your perspective in a powerful way, probably a lot more than one. You might want to write them down as they come across. I promise you're going to leave, as I said earlier, with a whole bunch of powerful new tools that you'll be able to put to work right away, not tomorrow, not next week, but right away today if you want to. This is a fun one. I promise that I'm going to share the best grant writing advice I ever got, my friends, in my entire 35-year career. And it's just 4 words. And finally, I promise that we're going to have a lot of fun together. At least I plan to. So you have already chatted in where you are currently in terms of your grants experience on a scale of 1 to 7, roughly speaking, with 1 being the total grants newbie. I'm so new, I don't even know what I don't know, right? And 7 being somewhere up in the realm of what I call the total grants wizard. Hey, you know, I can practically snap my fingers and the grant money appears, and everything in between. So I know we've got a lot of newbies here today, and I want to do a couple things. I want to welcome you, and I want to make sure you know you're not alone. So go in the chat if you haven't already and take a look at all the other ones that are showing up there. And I also want to ask you another question. This is especially for newbies, but if you know the answer, go ahead and chat it in. Do you know what the initials RFP stand for in grants world? Go ahead and chat it in if you know what RFP stands for in grants world. Oh my gosh, I can see the answers coming flying in. A lot of you know what this stands for. If you're a newbie, you might not. It stands for Request for Proposals, RFP. Very simply, that's the notice that a grant maker puts out to the community that says what? Hey, our doors are open now. We're open to accepting and considering proposals from eligible nonprofits. So my point is, my friend, even if you are a total grants newbie, even if you came here today thinking you were probably a 0, not even a 1, I promise you that each and every one of you now officially knows more about grant seeking than I did way back when I was tasked with writing my very first grant proposal. And it was a federal grant at that. I was brand new on the job. I'd never written a grant proposal before. I didn't even know what RFP meant. So to say I was green, what an understatement. Well, it's been a long and winding road with lots of bumps and surprises along the way. And believe me, just about anything that anyone could do as a professional in grants world, I've probably done it. I have the battle scars. I've made the mistakes to prove it, hopefully learned the lessons as well, including starting in 2006 as a grant maker, responsible for putting a couple of $1 million a year basically out into the community to support public education programs and teacher training initiatives. So I claim a kind of dual citizenship in grants world. I've lived on both sides, so to speak, as a grant seeker, which is where you are, and starting in 2006 as a grant maker. 2 very different worlds. And I've learned a ton of lessons along the way. And I'm never happier than when I'm able to share those hard-won lessons with my fellow travelers in grants world to help you along your own grant success path, which is exactly what we're going to be doing here today. So what do you say? Let's talk a little bit more about grant success in challenging times. So this is kind of a trick title because, my friends, here's the truth about grants world. Times are always challenging. Times are always changing. In my 35 years, there has never been a period in that long tenure in grants world where we weren't experiencing economic uncertainty, social uncertainty, political uncertainty, global uncertainty. The fact is we exist in an ecosystem. It isn't isolated work that we do. We're always part of that larger ecosystem, and that ecosystem is always shifting. So to get us ready to dive into the grantsmanship game, I want to share with you 3 basic, I think navigational mindsets is a good word for them. These are bigger than strategies. They're not ways of doing things. They're ways of positioning ourselves in relation to reality, whatever the reality looks like on any given day. And these 3 that we're going to be looking at are what I call ant view, eagle view, first principles, and double down. Okay, so these are the foundational perspectives that I'm going to challenge you to hold on to, that we're going to be exploring as we move through the grantsmanship game territory. So let's start with ant view and eagle view. What's the difference? What are we talking about? Well, imagine a little ant there down on the ground. I picked a cute little cartoon character because I didn't want to terrify anybody with the blown up shot of a real live ant. So our little friendly cartoon ant down on the ground is what? Very linear. She can only move from point A to point B to point C. Really all the ant can see is whatever's right in front of her. But way up high, that eagle flying above the horizon is what? Omnidirectional. Not only can the eagle see the whole landscape, but it can move up and down, and it can move sideways and back and forth in a way that an ant just can't do. So what else? Well, an ant is, I would posit, very tactical, supremely focused on getting that next task done, right? Pushing that crumb, toting that grain of sand. The eagle, on the other hand, because it has that bigger perspective, is much more what we might call relational, because it can see all of the moving parts. It can see how all the moving parts work with each other and interact with each other. Okay. The ant is also, and I love this so much, exquisitely adapted to pay attention to fine detail, right? This specific crumb, this specific grain of sand. While eagle from way up here can't see the grain of sand, eagle can't see that specific crumb. What eagle sees is the bigger picture and all the moving parts. So I'm going to make it clear that we're not saying that one is better than the other. Absolutely not. The point here, the point here is that each is perfectly adapted to the exact thing that's most important in its own ecosystem. And that's what we need to be thinking about in Grant's world, in our particular ecosystem. These are the two skills that nature has adapted the ant and the eagle for. And I propose that the ability to zoom in like the ant and zoom out like the eagle, and zoom in again and zoom out again at the right time. In other words, the ability to move back and forth between the exquisite attention to the fine detail and seeing the big picture with all its moving parts may be the single most important, powerful skill that we need in order to successfully navigate the grants world, especially, my friends, in a challenging or changing environment. Zoom in like the ant, zoom out like the eagle, ant view and eagle view. Right? So let's talk about that second bullet point, first principles. What do I mean by first principles? In my view, first principles are like the stars we steer by. I absolutely love this image that I'm sharing with you on the screen. First principles are those unchanging guideposts that we're always aiming toward, no matter how challenging or uncertain or turbulent the environment becomes for us. The underlying definition of first principle is something about which you can say, no matter what happens out there in the surrounding environment, these principles will always keep us upright and headed in the right direction. Now, one reason I really love this image of the sailing ship is, yes, it's steering toward the North Star. That is the guidepost, but it has to set its sails to take advantage of prevailing winds, changing circumstances. So it isn't that we're aiming straight on and being doggedly, stubbornly focused on going in this direction only. We change course only to take advantage of the changing winds. We reset our sails to take advantage of the changing winds, but we are always aiming toward steering by the same North Star, the same North Star. And finally, this last one really goes big. It's double down. Brendan Burchard says, however you do good, double down. Brendan Burchard, many of you may know him. He's a well-known thought leader in personal development and leadership. And his New Year's message a couple years back was basically, right now, my friends, in the face of everything that we're challenged by as good people with good hearts, wanting to do good things in the world, Brendan says, however you do good, now's the time to double down. Whatever it is that you do out there in the world, your way of bringing good into the world, now's the time to commit with your whole heart to doing that thing. That doesn't mean do more of it. That doesn't even mean necessarily working harder. It means be absolutely 100% wholehearted and intentional about bringing your good into the world. Whew, I would even take that to the next level. I would say not only double down, but this is also the time, it's always the time to level up, to make a whole new wholehearted commitment to getting better, at learning more, becoming more skilled at the things we do to bring our good into the world. And this is absolutely the time, guys. It's always the time to play big, to just let go of any notion that we're too little or inexperienced. I mean, you, the person that you are, you don't have enough power or money or a big enough voice. And I mean you as a member of the nonprofit and the community that you represent. Again, none of that is true. This is the time that calls all people of good heart and goodwill to step up with your full voice and play as big as we can, to get out there and do it together. So this is a very big message on this screen. Double down, level up, and play big. Those are the three really big mindsets or foundational perspectives that I wanted to bring into you before we even get into the framework that I call the grantsmanship game. So this is a picture of the grantsmanship game board, and you'll find it in your workbook if you have your workbook on page 2. By the way, if you don't have your workbook, don't worry about it. Everything that we'll be doing will also be on the screen here, but the workbook is available for you certainly to take notes as we go through, and you will want to print it out, I think, after the fact if you haven't done already, because it's got a lot of great stuff in it. So this is the grantsmanship game board, and the question is, what does it mean to think about our work in grants world as if it were a game? It's not about something frivolous or unimportant by any means. We're really talking about a way of thinking about how we move through the particular ecosystem that we inhabit that we're calling grants world. The game board represents the unique operating environment, the ecosystem that we become part of when we decide to work on getting grants for our organization. So every game has its own unique ecosystem, right? We think of it as the playing field. You play baseball where? On a baseball diamond. You play checkers where? On a checkers board. You play Candyland where? On a Candyland board. You play the grantsmanship where? On the grantsmanship game board. Now, every game also has what? Rules. Rules are not guidelines. Rules are not suggestions. Rules are not things that you can decide to do someday when you feel like it, but not the next. Rules are the non-negotiables. They're the first principles of grants world. These are the things about which you can say, unless you're trying to play Candyland with a 4-year-old, which I was doing just a couple of weeks ago, about which you can say, if you don't follow these rules, not only will you not win, but you're very likely to get kicked out of the game entirely. So the grantsmanship game has 5 rules, 5 first principles, and we're going to be diving into each of them one at a time, starting in just a few minutes. That's really the context for our 5 big first principles, right? But what else do we need to be successful at playing any game? So we've got the game board, right? We know the operating environment. We've got the rules. We know how things move around the game board. What are you thinking about? If I mention chess, what word comes to mind? Did you think strategy? That's what I'm thinking too. Now, strategies are not something that we are given like rules. Strategies are what we learn. Using the analogy of the ship, strategies are how we set our sails. They're the accumulated thinking, the wisdom, the experience, the training, the skill that we bring to how we make decisions in the face of unpredictable circumstances as we navigate an uncertain and changing environment. And one more thing about the grantsmanship game, we're very clear that there is a lot we can control, but we also know, if we're wise, that because grants world is a dynamic ecosystem with a lot of moving parts, there's a lot we cannot control. And it's very smart of us and very healthy of us to recognize the difference, to be able to let go of what we can't control and put all of our attention and our focus and our energy on what we can, which of course is what we're going to be focusing on here today. So that's our introduction to the grantsmanship game. And going forward, we're going to be visiting each of the 5 rules in more detail. And for each rule, we'll have the opportunity to zoom out, taking a great big high level relational eagle view perspective. And then we're going to zoom right in to ant view and explore some of the on the ground, get it done tactical tools, at least one for each rule that you can put to work in your own organization. So the big perspective and then specific tools that you can use on the ground for putting that perspective to work in your organization. Are you ready? How about this? Here's an idea. Let's start with rule number 1. What a great place to start. Now, rule number 1 is not go get the money. Rule number 1 is know yourself. Know yourself. I call this connecting purpose, that's the purpose of your organization, and planning. And the great big high perspective, the first principle behind rule number 1, I call the mission imperative. The first principle here is very simple. Steer inside your mission. Know your mission. Stay true to your mission. Did everybody get that? Especially in challenging times, especially in turbulent times, especially when there seem to be so many environmental pressures out there, we cannot afford to let loose of our mission. Our mission will always be our primary North Star. It is always what keeps us steering straight and strong. And I've got 2 tools to share with you here that relate to your mission. One is called the Mission Vision Values Tree, and the second is your fill in the blanks mission building model. So what I want to start with a little thought experiment for you, a very simple true or false. What do you think? Okay, chat in. What do you think about this statement? In challenging and uncertain times, which is pretty much all the time, getting grants starts with what grant makers are funding nowadays. Is that true or false? What do you think about that? I can see there are lots of answers coming in. Well, I'm going to call that one false, and here's why. It's something about what drives your organization. See this target with the heart in the middle? What are we looking at there? That is what I call the mission-centered or mission-first organization. The heart, your mission, is at the center of everything you do. And your grant seeking is driven by that mission as well. Everything you're doing is focused in grant seeking on finding the resources you need from within the ecosystem to do what? To help you move toward your organization's heart at the center, your organization's mission. Mission centered, mission first. What would be the opposite of mission first grant seeking? Well, you can tell from this picture that it has something to do with putting the dollars at the center of the target instead of the heart. And in trying times when we're really struggling because we think our financial opportunities are becoming more uncertain or more limited, there is a temptation. I totally get it. I've seen organizations fall prey to it, to say, you know what, there isn't as much money for what we always have done. Let's see where there is more money and go get that money instead. Let's do that thing instead. Please don't do that. Please do not become a dollars-driven, dollars-first organization where you find yourselves shifting your own focus, steering away from your North Star to connect with where you think the prevailing winds are taking things in terms of funding. Funding is always varied. Funding is always changing. Funding is always diverse. We never, and I mean 35 years, we never in the long run serve ourselves as organizations by becoming dollars driven instead of coming from the center of our mission. center of our mission. Now, what do we mean by mission? Well, I'm going to give you my definition. This is in your workbook on page 3. And by the way, if you do have your workbook, there's a workbook page reference in the bottom right-hand corner, or maybe it's in the left-hand corner from time to time, if we've got a page that I want to refer you to. So I won't be calling out page numbers from this point forward. This is the definition that I love to share about mission. Ready for this? Your organizational mission is a deeply held, common understanding of who you are as an organization, what you're here to do in the world, and why that work is important. So that's a very simple and straightforward definition that needs to be at the heart of everything we do. And so here's the first tool or resource in rule number 1, the mission, vision, values tree. I absolutely love this. I guess you can tell I love analogies and I love beautiful pictures and images. And so you get to benefit from that love, I hope, in ways that really light you up and inspire you as well. People take this particular tool back to their board meetings and say, look, this is what we need to be focusing on. This is why what we do is so important. So let's imagine that this beautiful tree is your organization and people come to you in your organization for what? Oops. Here we go. For the fruit that you offer, the fruit that your tree produces, the services and the programs that you provide to the community. Funders want to support you in providing those services and programs to the community. But when you ask a funder to invest in helping you provide those services and programs, they're going to say, yes, we like what you offer, but we need to know about the health of the tree that you're asking us to invest in. And the way we find out as funders about the health of the tree is by looking at what's going on below the surface, the part of the tree that we can't see from the outside. So what are we talking about? The root system. And the roots of the organizational tree are what? Your mission, your vision, and your values. Now, the thing about roots below the surface of a tree is that they serve 2 critically important functions, both for the tree and for our organization. Number 1, that's where all the nutritional value and the energy comes from, right? Drawing up from deep, deep, deep within, rising up through the tree to feed and nurture and produce excellence in services and programs. But the root structure also holds the tree strong and firm down here, no matter what's going on up here. So a tree with a weak root system may look good up here, but if the roots are weak or shallow, winds come, storms come, and what happens? The tree falls over, the roots are uprooted, the tree dies. It's not strong enough to sustain itself in turbulent times. What happens if a tree has a very strong and deep root system? Winds come, storms come, maybe branches fall, things up here change, but the tree as a whole stays healthy. The tree can regenerate, the tree can regrow, because at its fundamental level, at its roots, it has stayed true to its mission, its vision, and its values. So I share the mission, vision, values tree with you as an inspiration and as a reminder as we challenge ourselves to navigate through these difficult and turbulent times, that staying true to our mission, vision, and values is the single most important way for us to maintain our health and sustain our ability to thrive, not just survive, but thrive no matter what's going on in that crazy world out there all around us. Woo. That's a biggie, folks, but we've got more. Tactical tool number 2 for rule 1, that's a bit of a tongue twister, is your 3-minute mission building template. I love this. Basically, your mission statement breaks down into answers to 2 questions. What do we do and why do we do it? We do this in order to this. This is what we do, and this is the result we intend to achieve. Now, when I teach, I often use the example of a literacy program that helps people learn to read and write. I make up an organization, Literacy Volunteers of XYZ County. And the example here for my literacy program might be, for instance, what we do is we teach adults how to read and write in order to what? In order to help them reach their full potential as individuals, as employees, as parents, and as members of the community at large. We do this thing in order to achieve this result. Boom, basic mission statement right there. But let's just put a little more language to it and flesh it out. I do want you to keep it straight, narrow, lean, and muscular. I don't want fluffy language. I don't want hyperbole. I want it to be crystal clear in 5 seconds flat that you know exactly what your North Star looks like. You know exactly what you're driving toward. You know what you're organizing all of your resources around achieving, and you know why it's important that you steer a clear course. So start with your organization's name, Literacy Volunteers of XYZ County. Now, it may be that you're communicating with somebody who has no idea where XYZ County is, so you want to make sure you drop in a location marker. Oftentimes that would be the state that you are serving or where you're located. And then we've got to have something about your organization. I like this phrase here. This is Power Pack. We're a 35-year-old volunteer-based 501c3. That says an awful lot in just that one phrase, right? It tells us what? Something about our history. We're 35 years old. It tells us something about our values. We're volunteer-based. It tells us the kind of organization that we are. 501c3. Boom, done. Now here's the thing we do, right? We teach adults to read and write. We do this thing for or with these people. And why do we do it? Same language we just looked at, so they can achieve their full potential as individuals, as employees, as parents, and as members of the community at large. See, we're still following that same model that we just looked at, that we do this in order to that. We're just bringing a little bit of additional detail into it. But what's that one at the bottom? What's number 7, the because? What's that mean? That's all about because we do this in order to get this result. Because why? Because everyone deserves the opportunity to learn and grow. This is the powerful first principle. This gives me goosebumps when we get to this level. Then you've really got me. This is the big why. When we're in goosebumps territory, we are at the big why, because everyone deserves the opportunity to learn and grow. So that's it. Fill in the blanks. You got your mission statement. It's done. Anyone can read it. Anyone can understand it. Anyone can relate to it, and anyone can use it immediately to have a solid understanding of what your organization is all about and what's important about the work you do. Now, I understand this is sort of focusing on a single service organization. The same exact process works great no matter what your organization is doing out there in the world. And even the process of working through this language with your leadership team can help really clarify and focus the way you think about the work you do. Strongly recommend this as a team exercise. Boom, you're filling the blanks, mission building model. Woohoo. So the mission imperative, rule number 1 on the grantsmanship game board. And before we move on, I want to add that rule number 1 is not rule number 1, so we can get it over with and move on to the important stuff. Rule number 1 is rule number 1 because it is the most important. It's foundational. We don't get to move forward and do anything else on the grantsmanship game board until we really get rock solid on rule 1. Know yourself, the mission imperative. All right. Let's take a look at rule 2 down there in the bottom right-hand corner. Build true partnerships. What? It's not get the money? Nope, not yet. It's not get the money yet. This is about building true partnerships, collaborating for success. This is what we call the partnership imperative. That's our first principle of rule 2, the partnership imperative. In changing, challenging, turbulent, and uncertain times, guys, we cannot afford to become siloed. We cannot afford to think of ourselves in isolation from our ecosystem. We cannot afford to think and act as if our nonprofit is the only one out there fighting the good fight. We have to be taking every opportunity to share the resources, the risks, the rewards, the responsibilities with our other good-hearted, like-minded members of our community. So how important do you think this is to me? How many rules are there on the grantsmanship game board? There are 5, and this is one of only 5. That's important. I do a ton of training around this at Grants Magic U. I'm very, very passionate about partnerships, but I'm just going to give you a nice high-level flavor of what that looks like here today. We've got 2 tools or resources that you can take back and work with to begin shifting or strengthening the partnership paradigm in your own organization. The first one is please, can we just bust the myth that grant seeking is a competitive process? This is going to be challenging for you, I think. And then I'm going to show you 5 ways that collaboration is, and this is really important language, the single most powerful amplifier and accelerator of your grant success, the single best way to get more grants faster. And I'm going to show you the 5 tactical ways that that's true. But first, let's do our little thought exercise, the what do you think? Whatever you believe personally, how closely does this statement align with the prevailing culture in your organization? Chat in true or false if you'd like to, or you don't need to, certainly. But just what do you think? It's a competitive process. Getting grants, navigating grants world, it's a competitive process. Are you on to me now? You know this is a myth we're going to be busting, so you know what my answer is going to be. I'm going to call this one false. And I want to challenge you to think about this really hard. This might be tough. It is for a lot of people. Remember, the partnership imperative says we cannot afford in challenging or changing times. And I already said all times are challenging, all times are changing. So we can never afford to think of ourselves as operating in isolation from the rest of our ecosystem. So do you remember our ant view and our eagle view? The ant view is very, very focused on this next thing, on getting this next grant, and the eagle view can rise up and see the relations among all the players, all the moving parts on the ecosystem. So keep both those views in mind, zooming in and zooming out, because we're going to show how that zoom in, zoom out really works here to help us bust that myth that it's a competitive process. So we're going to run it through 4 different levels of thinking. All right, we're going to start with old school tactical, which is very much at view. And we're going to move that up through tactical into relational, which is very much eagle view. And then we've got a level even higher than that I call transcendent. So let's take a look at that. It's a competitive process. Old school says what? There's only so much to go around. Either you win or you lose. It's a zero-sum game, right? Vice versa. If someone else wins, you lose. You have to know how to play the game. So that's a very old school perspective. There's only so much to go around. We have to fight for our share. If someone else gets something, that means there's less for us. Now watch the shift here as we move up to tactical. Tactical says partnership and collaboration is the single most powerful way to amplify and accelerate our grant success. So why is this tactical? Well, because we're still saying we want what we want. We want to get grants, and we can really see how partnering can help us get grants for our organization. It's very tactical. It's all about what levers do we need to pull, what buttons do we need to push to get what we want. We want grants. How do we do that? Partnering is a powerful way to help us get grants. So it's still very ant focused. But now let's go up to the relational and see if our perspective shifts. Relational, ego view. Collaborating with others is good for our community as a whole. We can share resources, we can support each other's success, and we can all get what we need. So now we're looking at all the moving parts and seeing how they connect with each other and how we work together to make sure that the community as a whole is advanced and furthered. That's relational, that's ego view. But there's a level even above this that I want to challenge us to tap into, at least from time to time. We can't live there, but I challenge us to visit it from time to time. And that's the transcendent level, because it's bigger than everything. And it's way high, even bigger than ego view. And it looks like this. When you really go as high as you possibly can, we can see that there's already more than enough of everything we need to create the world we want to see. So let me just read that again. You can read it with me. There's already more than enough of everything we see to create the world we want to see. Everything we need. Did I say that right? To create the world we want to see. Where else would it be? If we believe that we can get it, we also have to believe that it's already there somewhere. It just may not be here right now. But it's the abundance mindset that it says it's out there. We've got an abundant world. We just haven't figured out how to move things around or expand them where they're most needed. So the abundance mindset, we start with scarcity at the bottom. There's only so much to go around, all the way up to full abundance at the top. Is there's more than enough of everything we need. So see how we've just taken that idea that grant seeking, getting grants is a competitive process, and we've run it through these 4 different perspectives. And you can see how each of these perspectives is going to create a different framework, a different energy, you could say, for moving forward. And the question here is, which of these frameworks or energies do you want to bring into your life, into your organization, into your work in the nonprofit ecosystem? Which one represents your first principle? Which is the North Star by which you want to steer your ship? Yeah. So that was fun. I always love teaching that zoom in, zoom out, but I promised we were going to get tactical. So let's do that right now. Let's go right down to that tactical level. Remember, our tactical level says what? Partnership and collaboration is the single most powerful way to amplify and accelerate our grant success. So let's just take a look at why that's true. 5 different ways. And I love this so much because I get to share this adorable picture. See that mama elephant and that adorable teeny tiny little baby elephant? As tiny as that baby looks, guys, she weighs 400 pounds, 400 pounds. But that baby elephant doesn't have everything she needs to make her way in the world just yet. She needs to stay close to mama until she's big enough to make it on her own. And that's exactly what partnering can do for us. If we're a brand new or a small organization, or if we're just brand new to grant seeking, we can tuck up under a partner's experience and credibility to get a start in grants world. You don't have to go it alone. You don't have to make all the mistakes. You can tuck up under an organization sometimes it's called a fiscal sponsorship. You can just also be a co-applicant on a grant proposal. The organization that already has the credibility, already has the experience to help you get your feet under you and get a good start in grants world. So that's number 1. Here's number 2. An unexpected or out of the ordinary partnership can intrigue the reviewer. So what's this image here? This is chocolate covered pretzels, of course. Now, hard as it may be to believe, once upon a time, there was no such thing as chocolate covered pretzels. And then one day somebody put sweet, smooth chocolate together with crunchy, salty pretzels, and voila, magic happened. When we partner with an organization that's different from ours, that same kind of magic can happen. It's going to ping the person reading your grant proposal in a whole new way. So our example is literacy. We do literacy programs. So who do we partner with? We partner with schools and we partner with libraries. All literacy programs partner with schools and libraries. Partnering is wonderful. But what if you're the reviewer and you come across a proposal that's a literacy program partnering with a church, a 501c3 literacy program in a church? That's different. I haven't seen that before. That's like salty pretzels and chocolate. I wonder what they're planning on doing with that. I wonder how that's going to work together. In this case, we work with the churches to recruit our volunteers from among their members in a rural community that we're moving to serve. Oh, that makes total sense. So that little ping of the unusual in the reviewer's mind can be just enough to set your proposal apart, give your proposal just a little bit of an edge. And a lot of times it's that little bit of an edge that makes your proposal memorable and can make a difference in the final funding decision. So an unexpected or out of the ordinary partnership can intrigue the reviewer and give your proposal a little bit of an edge. Number 3, more food, chocolate chip cookies. Partnering can bring in resources that we would otherwise have to get grant dollars to cover. So why am I showing you a chocolate chip cookie recipe? Well, if I'm setting out to make chocolate chip cookies, which I do a few times a year, I look at the recipe and I ask myself, what do I need to make these cookies? What are the ingredients and supplies that I already have? And what do I need to get? And where can I get them from? So we do exactly the same thing when we're building a grant proposal. What do we need to do the work we plan to do? What do we already have? What do we not have? And where can we go to get that stuff? So when it comes to where do we go to get what we don't already have, a lot of times we think we need to get grant dollars. In other words, we have to go to the grant store for this. But an alternative that we often overlook is, or we can find a partner. That would be like me making my chocolate chip cookies, deciding to go next door and see if I can borrow 2 eggs from my neighbor Tracy, and in exchange, I'll give her half a dozen beautiful cookies. And that means I can use grant dollars for something else, something I need and don't already have and can't get from a partner. So partnering again, bringing in resources we would otherwise have to get grant dollars to cover, helps us maximize and leverage those grant dollars in a really powerful way. How about this one? Strategic partnering can dramatically expand our pool of prospective grant makers. So let's stick with the example of our literacy organization. And let's say that the red circle that you see represents all the funders we found in our research who specifically support literacy programs. And there are a lot of them. That's great. We have prospective funders, yay. But now let's say that we are going to be bringing churches into our partnership, right? As I described a moment ago. Well, the minute that the churches become part of our project as partners, we also bring in funders potentially who only support projects that are affiliated with churches. That's the blue circle. And now they potentially become available to us as well, because why? Because we are now affiliated with churches as our partners. So we've got both the red circle funders that support literacy and the blue circle funders who support church affiliated projects. And now let's just say we also partner with a historical museum, just making that up. I have no idea why. It would need to make sense in the proposal, but let's just imagine there's a way that that works. So now the funders who specifically support museum related projects, maybe that's all they do, that's in that yellow circle, might potentially become available to us as well. So you can see if we're only thinking about our own mission, literacy, we're just that red circle of funders. But when we connect with partners who are different from us, we bring in their prospective grant makers as well. And now we have access to grant makers in all 3 circles, ta-da, because anything that expands our pool of prospective grant makers is a big, big win for us, tactically speaking. All right, that's 4. We've got one more. What's our 5th one? 5th and final tactical reason for partnering. Authentic partnering demonstrates that we are serious players in the grantsmanship game. Serious players in the grantsmanship game know about partnering. They know about collaborating, and grant makers realize that we are building stronger programs, stronger services, stronger connections, and stronger communities by showing up, playing big. Remember, playing big, as serious players. We may be brand new at it, but we're focused and committed to doing it the right way. This is the right way. There's nothing that marks a grant proposal faster as coming from a novice than kind of sharing a tunnel vision that doesn't even acknowledge that any other organizations or services exist outside them. So that's what authentic partnering brings. Authentic. It's not just pro forma. It's not just names on a sheet of paper, but real, true connections, connections that support the greater good in which we're asking our funders to invest. Woo. All right, so there's a lot going on inside rule 2, but let's take a look at rule number 3. Guess what, friends? Rule number 3 is not get the money. We're not there yet. Rule number 3 is plan, 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 plan. 4 plans. Building your master proposal blueprint. What the heck is that? We call this simply the planning imperative. The planning imperative says, especially in challenging and changing and turbulent times, we can't afford to be haphazard or unfocused or unclear about what we're putting out into the world. We just can't. We need a plan to support our actual work. And we want to have that solid plan to support our proposals for that work. Now, honestly, the vast majority of what I teach at Grants Magic U is all about building our plan, what I call our master proposal blueprint. For now, in this section, we're going to talk about something called creating the vision bridge. And then I'll also give you a fantastically powerful tool to help you do your proposal planning called, this is a really enticing title, right? Your secret code breaker cheat sheet. Dun, dun, dun. So here's your rule number 3. What do you think to get you going? What do you think? It's impossible to predict what questions you'll be required to answer in a given grant proposal, true or false. Every grant maker has their own request for proposals. They ask this and they want that. What's the point of trying to even plan ahead when you never know what they're really going to be asking? That is absolutely false. Busted. Funders always ask basically the same essential questions. At Grants Magic U, we call these the 10 essential planning questions. And if you know the underlying planning questions that every single grant proposal is going to ask you to answer in one form or another, then you can do your planning before you even have a funder in your sights, so to speak. And then once you are working on a proposal for funder A or funder B or funder XYZ, you've already got everything all worked out. You've got it all down. You just need to pull it forward and pop in what funder A is asking you to share in the form and format that funder A wants you to share it in. Do the same thing for funder B, funder XYZ. You've got it. So let's talk about that, about the plan. Your plan doesn't start with what you're going to do. Your plan starts with laying down two clear foundations. So you've got a framework for what you're going to do. I like to call this creating the vision bridge. So this is what? The San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, right? So imagine there's no bridge there yet. There's just the water and you want to build the bridge. Yay, you. What do? Do you just go out on the water and start putting down the girders across the water to get from one side to the other? No, you can't build a bridge that way. You have to start where you are. You have to put down a strong foundation where you are. And then you have to do what? Start building from there? No, you have to go all the way to the other side and put a strong foundation on the other side as well, where we want to be. So once you've got these two foundations on either side of the river, then and only then are you actually able to construct the pathway, the shortest possible distance between the two. How are we going to get there from here? In our grant proposals, it's exactly the same. Our plan needs to begin with what's the situation right here, right now that we want to change? In other words, what's the thing that's happening right now that we're inviting our grant makers to invest with us in changing? That's the foundation on this side of the bridge that we want to build. It's like the starting line, you can think. But we don't move from that. We don't start from about how we're going to solve that problem until we're really clear about what we're aiming for on the other side. We want to know where we're going with this. So that would be what we typically call our outcomes, our results, our impact. We have to be very clear where we're starting. We have to be very clear where we want to end up, what our finish line looks like, starting line, finish line. And then and only then it will make sense for the readers, the reviewers, to understand the details of how you plan to move forward. There's a context here. Oh, I get it. It's going from here to here, and everything inside is just the detail of how we're going to do that. I call that the change gap. And what that does is that everything in your proposal happens inside the change gap that you have defined for your readers. What's the change we want to create with the resources we're asking the grant maker to invest, starting where we are, where we want to end up. Everything in the proposal is in between those two foundations. Now there's a context for the grant maker to understand the work plan, all the details. Oh, I get it. It's to solve this problem, and this is what we want to see instead. Every single detail you now share in your proposal has a context. It fits, a place to go. It makes sense in the reader's mind. The reader understands what it's in aid of, as they say in the UK. That's what we call creating the vision bridge. Super powerful. All right. So now to your secret code breaker cheat sheet. I feel like I'm just zooming through all this stuff that I could spend an hour and a half teaching you on each and every point, but I'll help you come and visit me sometime so we can go a little bit deeper. But let's talk about your secret code breaker cheat sheet. So what you're looking at on the screen right in front of you right now is the X-ray vision underlying anatomy of every single grant proposal you will ever write, right there on one screen in front of you. So down the left-hand side are what I've referred to as the 10 essential planning questions that every proposal must answer. And down the right-hand side is all the different language that funders will use to ask these questions. They don't use the same language. They're just using different language to ask the same questions. So these phrases on the right-hand side also represent the different sections of your grant proposal. So again, the funders use very different language to ask you to submit your proposal, but the trick behind the secret codebreaker cheat sheet is that even though they use different language, they're always asking for essentially the same thing. So you find the language that they're using on the right-hand side. Let's say they're asking for an action plan. You say, I don't know what an action plan is. What are they looking for? So you find action plan, it's down there. Oh, you'll see it under 5 and 6. Let me expand that out for you there. Do you see that there? You go, okay, there's action plan on the right-hand side. You read across from right to left, and on the left side, you'll see the underlying planning question that the funders are asking you to answer. So along comes funder B, and now they're asking for what, an operational plan. You ask, well, what the heck is an operational plan? Is that different from an action plan? Go down the right-hand side again, find operational plan. There it is. Still under 5 and 6, read across to the left, and voila, the same underlying planning question. What they're really asking for, whether they say action plan or operational plan or implementation plan or methods or blah, 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 is for you to tell them what are the major steps you'll need to take to make these changes happen. What are the major steps you'll need to take to get from this side of the vision bridge to the other side? And then we're tacking on to that our partnership question. Who else has a vested interest in working with you as partners? See how that works? There's funder language on the right-hand side. There's the underlying planning question on the left-hand side. And you never, ever, 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 ever need to get confused anymore. When a funder asks this, what is it they really want to see? And by the way, this is the X-ray vision underlying framework, underlying anatomy of every single grant proposal. I said that already. I'm repeating it because it's so important. It's the framework that we teach inside Grants Magic U all day, every day. And now you've got it for you on the screen and an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper in your workbook. Magic. Oof, all right. That was a lot going on inside rule number 3, but let's go ahead. Take a breath, Maryn. Whew, and let's move to rule number 4. This is the fastest I teach these really powerful tools. Rule number 4. Finally, we're going to talk about where's the money, but we're going to do it this way. We're going to call it Know Your Funder, Research and Relationships. Now, if know your funder makes you think of rule number 1, know yourself, that's good, because here we're going to be focusing not on the research, not on where we go to find the funders. That's very tactical. And there are tools and resources out there for that. Side note, GrantStation just happens to be my very favorite funder finding resource. But on the relationship piece, that's going to be our focus. I call this I call this the perspective imperative. It is imperative that we stop thinking about funders as other, as different, as us versus them, as, I don't know, gods on Mount Olympus, dispensing blessings in some haphazard and random way. Funders are not distant gods on Mount Olympus, dispensing blessings in unpredictable ways. So I'm just going to challenge you here and now to think differently, to shift your thinking a little bit about the perspective of who we are and who the funders are as well. So the first thing we're going to be doing here, I'm really excited, there's going to be audience participation here, is an exercise that I call You Be the Grant Maker, where you get to put your grant maker goggles on. And then we have something called the 12-12-12 scenario. So are you ready for this? So here's our thinking exercise. What do you think about this? This one's a little bit provocative. A winning proposal is all about using persuasive language and persuasive arguments to, well, persuade. Is that what a grant proposal is all about? I'm a grant maker and I don't think so. I think of the word persuade as being manipulative. And when you shift your perspective and become the grant maker, you realize that nobody's really persuading you of anything. You're simply evaluating what people are bringing to you and making your best decisions accordingly. So it's a very different mindset as the grant seeker writing the grant proposals to shift away from we have to persuade the grant maker. See how tactical that is? We have to pull the levers and push the buttons to persuade somebody to do something our way. That's a very different energy from saying, you know what, we have to show up with the very best, we've got to demonstrate the power and the value of what we bring to the world and the opportunity that we represent for the funder among all the opportunities that they're considering, and let them decide what's best for them. It's a very, very different energy, isn't it? And that energy comes when we shift our perspective. I found this graphic a while ago. I use it all the time because I think it's so powerful. I mean, in a lot of ways outside of Grant's world. So you see two shadows on the back wall, and one of them is sort of an orange shadow with a green square in the middle. And then we've got another one that's a blue shadow with a circle in the middle. And they both say this is true, and they both are true. How can that even be? Well, it's just seen from different points of view, depending on where the light's coming from, and depending on where you stand, the exact same thing, the truth, will look very different. Okay, there's that shape in the middle. That is the truth that is reflecting in two very different ways onto the back wall, depending on your perspective. There's always a truth that's different from any one person's perspective about what is really true. So we're really talking about seeing through other eyes, and that is a challenge for every single one of us. And that's why I'm just sharing all these fun things with you to hope that something is going to really stick. How about this little doggy here? Who loves Chihuahua doggies with great big glasses? This little fella's got glasses on just like I do, just like I know a lot of you do. And typically when we wear glasses, the prescription is different for each of the two lenses. The right lens and the left are different. So let's just imagine that these are the grant seeker glasses. Okay, through one lens, we're focusing on what we want, what our organization wants and needs in order to what? Support our mission in the world. But the other lens is going to be tuned into what the specific funder wants and what they need in order to fulfill their philanthropic mission. And there's a sweet spot out there, not right up front, real close, but out there somewhere, there's a sweet spot where the two come together. That's the focal point. And that's the sweet spot for our grants research and our grant proposals. We're looking for the funders who are in that sweet spot, lined up with what we want, our mission, lined up with what the funder wants, needing to support the philanthropic mission of the funder. That's our sweet spot. Now, all the stuff outside that sweet spot is no concern of ours whatsoever. There are a cajillion funders who aren't in our sweet spot. We don't care. We pay no attention to them. We're only focusing on the ones who are. Especially in challenging times, and we already said all times are challenging. We can't afford to waste our time and waste our resources chasing all these cajillion funders out there who aren't in our sweet spot. We want to focus in on building our relationships with the ones who are most likely to say yes and to be excited about saying yes because what we're doing is aligned with what they want to do too. So I want to give you a chance to be the grant maker. Put your grant maker goggles on. If you've got your workbook here, you're going to be looking at page 11, but I'm also going to have these on the screen. It might be a little hard for you to read. That's okay. That's part of the exercise. Oops, don't do that. Yeah, that's okay. Imagine that you're a grant maker, you're a grant reviewer, and you're considering two proposals, proposal A and proposal B. In your workbook, I think it says proposal 1 and 2. Just cross those out and change them to A and B. So you have $50,000 to award, and each proposal is asking for $50,000. The focus is, just broadly speaking, on projects to provide training for K-12 teachers. That is actually what my role is as a grant maker. And that's all the background you need, really. So you're going to read these two pieces and decide which one is going to get the $50,000. One of them will, the other one won't. Full funding for one and nothing for the other. Don't start till I say go. They're both eligible, so you're completely free to choose either one, and you have to choose one and only one. But there are two little tricks for us here today. The first one is all you're going to see is the proposal summary, not the full proposal. And the second is that I'm going to give you just 30 seconds each. Just based on the proposal summary, I'm going to start timing you. You're going to have 30 seconds for proposal A, and then I'll cue you 30 seconds for proposal B. This is not a speed reading exercise. I just want you to get your first impression. You got your funder goggles on. Ready, set. I'm going to start the timer for proposal A right now. Good luck with this, guys. All right, that 30 seconds went really fast. Wherever you are on proposal A, go ahead and swap over to proposal B. Your 30 seconds starts right now. All right, that's it. Time's up. Now, in just a minute, I want you to chat your decision into the chat box. Wait till I say go. You're going to be chatting in just A or B, just those, one of those two, an A or B, whichever proposal you would fund just based on what you saw. But I also want you to chat in scoring from 1 to 10, how confident you are that you're making the better choice. What's your confidence level, with 1 being, I am not confident at all, and 10 being, I am totally confident that this is the better choice. So go ahead and chat that in now, A or B, and a number from 1 to 10 representing your level of confidence. Ready? Go ahead and go. All right, I'm making you work really fast here. There's a reason for that. David, what are you seeing coming in?
We see a lot of Bs coming in, 7s, 8s, 9s, a few As floating in there, but I would say it's a lot of Bs and it's a lot of 7s or above.
7s or above. So what proportion would you say is B versus A, just based on what you're seeing right now?
85%.
Oh
B.
my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
and you guys can check the chat yourself and verify David's accuracy.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's
guys,
a lot. Yeah,
yeah.
I would just say you're seeing a lot more Bs than you are As. That's for sure.
So what just happened here? How is it that the vast majority of you voted for proposal B with a high degree of confidence on the basis of what? 30 seconds and a 200-word summary. What was it that you saw? What was the experience for you as the grant reviewers? You put on your reviewer's goggles and you were reading proposal A. What was your experience around proposal A? Not just what did it do or what didn't it do. You really don't have much time to absorb that, but how did you feel about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? How long did it take you to decide? Did it make you feel, I hear this a lot of times, people say, it made me feel stupid because I couldn't really understand what they were saying. I thought maybe I needed a nap or something. And then versus proposal B, what was your experience with proposal B? Lots of times people will say things, oh my gosh, I didn't need a nap. I didn't realize how much of a struggle proposal A was till I got to proposal B. It wasn't me, it was the proposal. B was like a breath of fresh air. And I have done versions of this same exact exercise using the same exact examples over 100 times by now, maybe 200, online in large groups and small training sessions. And 9 times out of 10, at least 85% of the time, proposal B is the proposal that's selected, whether it's individual or a group decision, not because that's the objectively right choice. There is no such thing. Not because proposal A is inherently bad or proposal B is quote unquote perfect, but because that's the choice that reviewers feel most confident about. So my question to you would be simply, can you keep this exercise in mind and learn something from it for yourself about what it's like to be the reviewer? That's a big one, isn't it? But let's take a look at why that matters. Let's take a look at this, the 30-second rule, part 1. How long did it take you to decide what you thought about proposal B? I only gave you 30 seconds because it only takes 30 seconds to fall in love with the proposal, literally 30 seconds. I'll bet you had your reaction in your first response to proposal A very quickly as well, because it only takes 30 seconds to fall in dislike with a proposal 2. Now, dislike may be too strong a word for what you thought about proposal A, but clearly there was a lot more love and a lot more confidence around proposal B. So you just had a tiny little 200-word extract, but I promise you the rest of these proposals, and these are word for word with some anonymizing from real proposals in my process, read exactly the same. What you saw here That's what the whole proposal sounds like. So the question becomes, what can I do to be more like proposal B, the proposal that the reviewer falls in love with in the first 30 seconds? That's a whole grant writing course wrapped up in one question. And that's the question I want you to take away with you from this exercise today. Good job. You can take your grant maker goggles off now if you'd like to. And congratulations. So that brings us to the 12-12-12 scenario. So you just got a tiny little taste of what it's like to be a grant reviewer, but you didn't have the context. That wasn't a real world scenario, right? It doesn't take just 1 minute. It's not just one proposal, and it's not just the 200-word summary. It's a lot more than that. We do ourselves a big disservice as grant writers if we imagine that the reviewers are reading our proposal under the best of all possible circumstances. They're going to lavish just as much loving and adoring care and attention on our one specific, beautiful, bouncing baby proposal as we did putting it together. When in fact, you have to take it in the context of everything else that the reviewer is up against. And that means it's a lot better if we imagine our proposals are being read under the worst of all possible circumstances. Dun, dun, dun. Here's what that might look like. Let's imagine you have a proposal into a grant maker and there's a review team meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. There are 26 proposals to review. One of the review team members, let's call her Betsy, for very good and valid reasons, has not yet had a chance to read the proposals that her team is going to be looking at in the morning. She's just now sitting down to do it. And it's 12 o'clock midnight, our first 12. So it's already very, very late in the night. And not only that, not only has she not been resting and relaxing the entire day, she's actually already put in a 12-hour workday. So just imagine under those circumstances what her mental energy might be like, how much focus she has, whether it's a challenge or not for her to bring her full attention and actually focus on decoding everything that's in your proposal. But there's one more 12. And oops, I kind of tipped my hand on that one. You already had these two things working against you in your proposal on mental energy. But yours is not the first proposal in the stack that she needs to read. It's not the second one that she needs to read. It is literally the 12th proposal down. She has 11 other proposals that she needs to get through before she even comes to yours. So it's 12 midnight. She's had a 12-hour workday behind her already, and your proposal is the 12th one in her stack. The question now becomes, and this is your takeaway from this exercise, what does your proposal need to do? What does it need to look like? How does it need to be organized? How do you make your language choices? What decisions do you make about how you arrange and present your information so that not only does Betsy not crash her head on the desk as she falls asleep before she even reaches the end of page 2, but she gets so fired up, she gets so excited, she gets so energized and enthusiastic about your proposal that she wakes up and she goes, oh my gosh, this is a 5-star proposal. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get to that review team meeting tomorrow morning and tell everyone we have to fund this one. We have to fund this proposal. And that, my friends, is a very real life scenario. It happens all the time. It's the way it works. And I want yours to be that proposal that wakes Betsy up and gets her so excited she can't wait to get to that meeting and be your champion. You can let Betsy be your pocket proposal guide and coach. Maybe every time you face a decision about your proposal, it goes like this. I don't have very much space. Maybe I can stretch the margins all the way out to the end. If it's a paper proposal, people still want paper proposals. I don't have very much space. Maybe I can make the type size teeny, teeny, tiny to squeeze more things on the page. Ooh, or maybe I can use as many acronyms as I can to save characters. Just knock on Betsy, tap Betsy's and ask her what she thinks. Hey, Betsy, do you think that it'd be a good idea for us to eliminate bullets and lists and just have long paragraphs and unbroken text, or load the proposal up with acronyms so we can get more information crammed in? You are going to hear her go, no, don't do that. And that's your big clue that that's a very bad idea when it comes to what the reviewers are going to fall in love with, making it easy for them to fall in love with your proposal, like proposal B. So that's Betsy, your pocket proposal advisor. You're welcome. I can still hear her shrieking in my ear. So rule 5, my friends, we have really covered a lot of territory, and now we are ready to talk about putting it all together, create an A+ grant proposal, pulling it all together on paper or online. We call this the control imperative. Remember, we said earlier when we looked at the grantsmanship game board that there's a lot we cannot control, but there's a lot we can control as well. And this is where everything that we can control all comes together into that package that's going to deliver our plan to the Betsies of the world. So here we're going to focus on two tools, two goodies. Our main focus is going to be on writing. There are a lot of other tasks and challenges in terms of putting a proposal together, but remember, you already have your secret code breaker cheat sheet, so you already have the framework for your proposal, and all the rest of it is subject for other webinars in the future. This is just going to be a quick hit about the writing. This is where I get to share the best grant writing advice I ever got, and I'm also going to give you 10 keys to effective writing. So what do you think? Here's your thought. Here's your little thought question. True or false? I think you all know what my answer is. There's such a thing as a perfect grant proposal, a guaranteed winner. Yes or no? As grant writers, we're always out there chasing the last point, right? We just need to tweak it this way. We get feedback that'll tell us what we could have done instead to guarantee that we would have gotten that perfect proposal. No. No. There's no such thing as a perfect proposal that's a guaranteed universal winner. Every review process is unique. Every reviewer is unique. Every group of proposals being reviewed is unique. There are so many things that go on in the grant review process that have surprisingly little to do with the quality of any one grant proposal, and a whole lot more to do with the dynamics of the process and all the other proposals that are in the mix. So it isn't about the perfect proposal. It's about what we call an A+ proposal. And really briefly, here's what an A+ proposal looks like. Bare bones basics. What's the first thing your proposal needs to do? It needs to get in on time. Give me an amen if you've got that horror story of the proposal that almost missed the deadline, or worse yet, did miss the deadline. Ugh, I certainly do. Number two, the proposal has to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. I see some hands going up. That's the amen. All right, horror stories, my friends, I'm with you there. The very specific technical requirements that each funder gives us, we need to make sure we pay close attention to those, because if we don't, we could disqualify ourselves from moving forward in the review process. What else does the A+ proposal do? Well, it represents the front end, clearly represents the front end of a well thought out project plan. We've done all the planning and that is reflected in the final proposal. So getting in on time, that's the first obstacle. Making sure that it meets the technical requirements, that's the second obstacle. Making sure that it's a rock solid plan. There's a vision bridge that we can see, the issue that we want to be resolving, what we want to see instead, the plan we have for getting us from where we are to where we want to be. 1, 2, and 3. But there's one more thing an A+ proposal does, and I bet you know what that is already, right? What do you think? Your proposal has to clearly show how supporting this project will advance the grant maker's philanthropic goals. That's our perspective piece. That's the sweet spot, right? That's where this is what we want meets this is what the funder wants. And that's it. If we can manage to do that high level, then we've got the A+ grant proposal. Now, does having an A+ proposal guarantee it will get funded? Absolutely not. But it does give you the best shot of making it through all of the obstacles and into the finals round, which is where the decision making happens. So push pause on that for just a moment and let me tell you about the best grant writing advice I ever got. I love this picture so much. It came from a federal program officer years and years ago, very early on in my own grants career. I was working on a huge grant for a major metropolitan social service agency, a federal grant, and I was stumped by something in the RFP, the request for proposals. There was something I didn't understand. I had never written that large a grant before. I was new, I was naive, and I thought, well, we'll just call up the program officer person guy in Washington, D.C. and see if he can give me some guidance. Now, I learned later on, lots of people are scared to do that, and they think they're not supposed to. My boss actually told me I shouldn't have done that. She was wrong. Please do. Please reach out for the funder. Please call or email the program officer, the point person. Please ask the questions that you need to have answered. Trust me, if they are available to answer those questions, that is what they're there for. And I totally understand you can't always get a person who's available to answer your questions, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. So in my case, I caught him late on a Friday afternoon, and apparently he had a pretty rough week. He was very good about answering my questions. And I said, thank you very much. But then he said, hold on just a minute. Wait just a minute. Before you go, can I ask you to do something for me? I said, oh my gosh, he's the federal program officer. Of course, I'll do anything. He said, please, whatever you do not send me another deadly, dry, boring, horrifically dead as dust grant proposal. I said, what? He said, I've been reading deadly, dry, boring, dead as dust grant proposals all week long. Please do me a favor. Just make your proposal sing. 4 words. I said, I'm sorry, what do you mean by that? And then he said, bye, gotta go, and hung up. So figuring out what he meant by that has informed absolutely everything that I teach about how to put an A+ grant proposal together, because what he's saying is, think of Betsy, think of us, the real living, breathing people who are working hard to make good decisions as grant reviewers. Please don't think you have to impress us with your big vocabulary and complex sentences and jargon and all. We're just real people. We just want to do a good job. Make it easy for us to do a good job. Bring your proposal to life. Put real, live, living, breathing people on center stage. You've got a curtain here. There's an empty stage. We're sitting there waiting for you to show us something. Put people on the stage. Show us what they're doing. Show us the difference that they're going to make. Make us feel really good to be sitting here considering your proposal. Make it really easy for us to fall in love with your proposal and say, yes, we want to be a part of this. In other words, just one more time, because it's so much fun. Make your proposal sing. I just love that. That is so much fun. I have to control myself now. The golden rule of good writing is, you won't be surprised, write as you would be written unto. You can put yourself in Betsy's position. You know what's going to make Betsy scream, because it's the same thing that would make you scream. You know what's going to make my federal program officer cuss on a Friday afternoon. Oops, sorry about that. PowerPoint's going rogue on me there, because you know what would make you cuss on a Friday afternoon. Write as you would be written unto. And here are the 10 keys to effective writing. Oh, well, what happened? Never mind. Look at that, going backwards in time, folks. Here are the 10 keys to effective writing. You can study these on your own from your workbook. And we teach them in our Power Writing for Grants and More class, which I also teach through GrantStation. But just skim through this and notice how many of these have to do with mental energy, things like keeping things simple and clear and lively to respect the mental energy of your reader on the other side, your 12-12-12 Betsy, your pocket proposal advisor, right? So what we're really doing is we're writing to express. We forget that. We think we're writing to express. We're not. We're writing to express. That means our writing should be transparent. The writing is the package that's carrying our product forward. It should not be difficult to get through the package to the good stuff on the inside. And the good stuff on the inside is what? That's our plan. So the writing shouldn't get in the way of the plan. The writing should help the beauty and the strength and the power of your plan shine through purely, clearly, and compellingly. The bottom line, I love this so much, is nothing should stand between the reader, the Betsy's of the world, and the great ideas that you want to communicate. Dum, da, dum. I always feel like I should stand up and sing a song here. I am so passionate about clarity in writing. Excuse me one second. All right, so that's it, my friend. That concludes our tour of the Grantsmanship game board and the 5 rules, the 5 best practice strategies, the 5 first principles that will drive your grant success through the challenges and opportunities ahead. So I hope that's helpful. We're not quite done yet, but I hope that's helpful to give you a sense of what that landscape looks like, whether this is your very first time going through it, or your second time, or your third, or your 10th, or your 100th. If you're a newbie, you have a sense of what lies ahead. If you're in the mix as a competent grant professional, this will hopefully clarify some of the struggles that you've experienced along the way, maybe help bring into focus some of the obstacles that you've been tussling with. And if you've got a ton of success behind you, but maybe you find that your team members or your partners in the community, maybe your clients, if you're an independent consultant, just don't get what grant success really takes, laying this path out this way for them will help them have a better understanding of everything that's involved. But before we wrap up, there's one more important element that I just want to spend another moment with on the grantsmanship game. I just want to circle back. We talked about the unique operating environment, the ecosystem that I call Grants World. And we've taken a high flyover of the 5 rules, the non-negotiables by which we steer in challenging times. We've looked at a number of strategies, right? Ways of setting our sails, making decisions along the way in the face of the changing environment. But what about that 4th bullet point? Really haven't spent any time with that one down there at the bottom, what we can and cannot control. I promised a few minutes ago we'd take a little bit of a closer look at what this means and why it matters and how we orient ourselves with that reality. The fact is, the game that we laid out on our grantsmanship game board is our game, the grant seekers game, right? But it's not the grant makers game. This is the work that we do in order to push submit on our A+ grant proposal. Now, push submit, that's box 20 on the Grantsmanship game board. Do you see it down there just above the pink block in the bottom left? Let's expand that out. Here's the grant makers game. That little arrow between 20, submit qualified request by deadline, and 21, get funded, hopefully, and thank the funder. That's where all the grant makers work happens. That's where we push submit and our proposal vanishes into what I call the grant makers black box. That, my friends, is the finals round of our game. And guess what? We don't control anything that happens there. This is just a few of the things we have no control over inside the grant makers black box. Just look at that list. We don't control who's looking at the proposals or what other proposals are in the mix. We don't control anything about the reviewers' personal preferences, their mental energy, how many proposals they had to plow through before they got to ours, the quality of the other. We don't control any of that. But our job as grant seekers is to get our proposals into the finals. And how do we get into the finals? By making it successfully through all the qualifying rounds. The grantsmanship game board, rule 1, rule 2, rule 3, all around the grantsmanship game board, everything we just spent so much time exploring, all of that is what gets us into the finals round. And how do we make it successfully through all the qualifying rounds? Well, here's how, guys. By doing an A+ job on everything we can control. We recognize what we cannot control. We recognize what we can. We recognize that our job is to stay in the game and get all the way through the qualifying rounds to the finals. And we do that by doing an A+ job in terms of our mission focus, in terms of our partnerships, in terms of our project plan, our grants research, our relationships with grant makers, and an A+ job in terms of the actual proposal that's being submitted. If we do that, we are doing everything that we can control, and we're positioning our proposal for the best chance of success in the finals round. Because remember, the grantsmanship game is it's an adventure, right? The grant success path is an adventure. You're the hero of your own adventure. I like to think of you as having a superpower. Why not? You have the power to transform good ideas into something real and valuable and important in the world. And the world needs your superpower now more than we ever have before. I promise you that. And the grant success path is the roadmap. You don't have to worry about the roadmap. All you have to think about is, how can I bring my superpower to this adventure in a way that's going to create something real and valuable and important in the world? So just to go back, it isn't an ATM machine, is it? It's not a jackpot machine. These random things just happen. I just keep whacking away at it. I don't know what makes them happen. Whack-a-mole? No, it's not about whack-a-mole either. It isn't that shoots and ladders game where you just think you're getting somewhere and all of a sudden you get a giant setback. Setbacks happen, my friends. That's part of the rocks and roots of the journey, right? It's part of what happens when you've chosen this adventure in Grants World. There is a path forward. There may be wrong terms, but there is also a consistent path forward. And now you have an eagle view of the grant success path, which automatically takes you out of that whack-a-mole reactive mode and puts you firmly in control. So I want you to remember, it's a long game. It's not a one and done, and it's a process. There is a specific sequence of things to be working on, and it is an adventure. Why not think of it that way? Meaning it is never going to be the same twice. The path is consistent and reliable, but it never takes you through quite the same territory. You're the hero of your own adventure, hooray. And now you have the map. In other words, I love this. You always had the power. Who knows where this picture is from? It's the end of The Wizard of Oz, and it's one of my favorite screenshots ever. The good witch Glinda is simply letting Dorothy know, after everything Dorothy's been through, all of her adventures and misadventures in Oz, that the power to get where she wanted to go was always with her. That's you. You always had the power, and now you know how to use it. Just two more very important things before we wrap up. The first is something that I call the 8 qualities of exemplary proposals. And you'll find the whole list on page 16 in your workbook. What I want to let you know is that this is not guidance being shared for grant writers. There are a lot of checklists for things for grant writers. This is actually a checklist of guidance that's being given to grant makers. We're saying, hey, grant makers, grant reviewers, these are the qualities and characteristics you should be looking for in the proposals that you choose to fund. You can read all 8 of them on your own, and you'll see how closely they track with what I've been sharing with you today. But I just want to share number 1. It's so exciting. Take a look at this. It's enthusiasm. Number 1, just listen to this. The proposal bristles with enthusiasm, urgency, passion. It sings, right? It suggests a group of people who can barely contain their eagerness to begin working. Ooh, can you feel that energy there? Watch this, it gets better. As a reader, you find yourself inspired and excited by their plans. As a reader, meaning you, the grant reviewer, the Betsy, the federal program officer, sitting down and reading these proposals, the proposal bristles with enthusiasm, urgency, passion. It suggests a group of people who can barely contain their eagerness to begin working. As a reader, you find yourself inspired and excited by their plans. Lots of people print this out and keep it right beside their workstation to remind them of exactly this, because that's what I want for you, my friends. That's everything we build into everything we do at Grants Magic U. So you can be the person behind that proposal, the proposal that bristles with passion, that excites and inspires, the proposals that sing. And one more thing, this really is the very, very, very last thing. It's a reminder of your superpower, a reminder that you are the hero of your grant success path, because you have the power to transform good ideas into something real and valuable and important. So my challenge to you is to think of one action that you can take right away that'll give you a quick win. Wave your magic wand right away and do something. It might be something as simple as printing out the follow along workbook if you haven't done that yet, or share something from this training with your team or partners. Those are both great quick action wins, or just plan to watch the replay video with your team. Anything that pinged for you and something I shared, something quick and simple to give you that terrific shot of I did it success. That's what we're looking for here. You'll know what it is. Don't wait. Take your quick win action right now and make that magic happen. So I want you to know that I am now an official card carrying member of your grant success team. Your grant success matters to me because I know that what you do matters to our world. It really, really does now more than ever. I mean that with all my heart. So everybody double down, level up, play big, go out and make your amazing magic today and every day. Thanks, everybody.
Visit GrantStation to see our latest online education offerings in the form of live webinars, interactive workshops, and on-demand learning. GrantStation.com, your fast track to funding and online education.